iron and steel, manufactured products, and construction materials. These are the three categories of product under a new domestic preference law called Build America, Buy America that are being used to identify products. When you pull down federal funding in the future, 55% of each of those categories is going to have to comply with this law, meaning 55% has to be domestically made. But what exactly are those categories? How are they defined? What products fit in where? Implementation guidance is still forthcoming, but we might have a few insights for you. I'm Bob Crossan, Senior Managing Editor for Water and Waste Digest, and I'm joined today by Vanessa Leiby. She's the Executive Director for the Water and Wastewater Equipment Manufacturers Association, or more commonly known in the industry as WWEMA. Vanessa has been following this issue pretty closely for her members, and she's going to share a couple of insights with us. So thanks so much for being here, Vanessa. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a very interesting, nuanced, and big issue, and we're going to try and boil it down a little bit so that people can understand it a little bit better. Could you talk about right now, kind of like, what is the current status of things as it relates to BABA and its guidance?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And it's really important for people to understand that. As we know, the law was signed um, by President Biden in November of 2021, and we had until May 14th for the compliance date for the Buy America requirements. OMB didn't really come out until April 18th with their actual guidance. And that guidance really just restated the law and added more caveats around the use of waivers. And they turned that document over to all the federal agencies because, of course, the requirements cover all federal agencies in the government. And then EPA was tasked with developing what they were calling implementation procedures, which would actually be the boots on the ground of how we go about implementing the new requirements. So many months now down the road, we still do not have any additional information. We understand just within the last couple of days that EPA is planning to develop some Q&A, so some questions and answers that we may see by the end of August or mid-September. And we also know that there's been a lot of discussion and frankly confusion around the concept of the manufactured product, which is new from what we haven't had before under the American Iron and Steel. And I think there were so many questions that the Office of Management and Budget, the Made in America office, decided to take that back. And so they are now developing a whole of government definition for a manufactured product. How do you calculate the 55%? How do you certify? How do you determine compliance? And unfortunately, we understand that guidance probably won't be out until the fall. So we're waiting, right, on any kind of guidance to explain how we manufacturers in particular are going to be able to comply with these new requirements going forward.
Mm-hmm. You're mostly focused on those manufacturers, obviously being your members. But I'm curious about this also, just from your perspective of what are some of those key parameters. Obviously, they have certain key parameters they're going to need to keep in mind, but there's other water professionals. You got consultants, engineers, you have the utility personnel as well. What are some of the key parameters of Build America, Buy America? Do you think that they need to keep top of mind when they're talking with these manufacturers?
Well, the first thing that we have to remember is that the states themselves and the utilities are undertaking a number of tasks as well. So this money is supposed to be funneling through to the SRFs. So individual states right now are actually developing their intended use plans and the project priority lists and submitting those to EPA for approval. To date, not one state has received that approval. And so that means that federal funding has not started flowing to the states that would have this Buy America requirement attached. So that's one of the key challenges that we're dealing with in the industry right now, is that people know that it's coming, and they want to know that a company can meet the new requirements, but until there's guidance, until the states have all of their paperwork in order, a number of them are redoing their disadvantaged community requirements. A number of waivers are being issued right now in draft by EPA. And so until a lot of those pieces get put in place, it's going to be very difficult for projects to move forward. So that's one thing I really want people to understand, is that we're at this point nowhere close to understanding what compliance could looks like for the Buy America requirements. We're trying to educate our members and the industry broadly about where we stand in all of this, and just let them understand that right now the question of can you comply with BABA requirements is quite difficult, if not impossible. The other thing that's really important is all of our products within our industry in the water sector, and it really across the federal government, has to fit into one of three buckets. So the products are either going to be iron and steel, manufactured product, or construction materials. For water, the iron and steel requirements are pretty much going to mimic exactly what we've been doing with American Iron and Steel. For people, your readers and listeners who might be familiar with that, which we've been dealing with for the last 8 years. So that list is really the iron and steel list for the water sector. The construction materials is a whole nother bucket that's new, that's much more expanded than we were dealing with under AIS, and contains non-ferrous metals, glass, PVC, a whole number of other products. And that's still being developed, and the criteria for that and the guidance by OMB. So we don't know the answer to that yet. And then the biggest part of that, the biggest bucket of all, is the manufactured product, which we're currently waiting for guidance on how to implement that. So that's really important for them to know, that we have to fit all of our products into one of those buckets. The only bucket that we really know for sure about right now is the iron and steel. Mm-hmm. So that's all coming.
Yeah. So moving a little bit on to some of the next, like thinking about it, what's happening next. Obviously, you mentioned a couple of things that are happening right now. Is that because of this kind of delay and everything, some of that funding hasn't really started flowing yet. So that's certainly an impact. Are there other impacts that you're seeing right now? And what do you see this having? What type of effect do you see this having kind of long term? Because obviously this is here to stay.
Right. So one of the other major issues as well is we do have the ability to have waivers under the BABA requirements. And that's another area that is right now, just now beginning, we're seeing a number of federal agency issue national waivers. So that is still in progress. So we still don't know who's going to be exempt, how long, groups of funding organizations or the like might be exempted. So there's a lot that we don't know right now. And so I think what we're seeing in the industry right now is so many questions about how we're going to move forward that we're really stalling right now. And it's disappointing because, the whole purpose of this funding was to get it out to infrastructure that needed to be built, particularly in the water sector, on time and on budget and on task. And right now we're not achieving any of that. This 9 months after the law has been signed, we still don't have guidance in place to understand how to move forward. So that's really discouraging right now. And in the long run, frankly, what all of this is going to translate into, once we figure it out, is going to be project delays and increased pricing. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of fact that all of these new requirements are going to take longer. We're going to have to go through a more arduous waiver process. And so projects are going to take longer, and they're going to cost a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, anytime that you add these extra layers of layers onto a project, it increases it just that little bit more, and it is felt by the utility and the end user in the
Oh,
end.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Vanessa, for taking the time with us today. It's been very, very helpful to learn a little bit more about what's going on and some of the insights that you have, and things that your members are also providing you and telling you about from their perspective. It's very useful. And for everyone who's watching, definitely check out the video description below. We'll have some resources on the WWEMA website, as well as some resources on our website, so you can learn a little bit more about BABA and what's going on there. And once more to Vanessa, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bob.